everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my weekly wrap of October 11th, 2015. I'm going to tell you about the 4 things that I read this past week. Just a warning, I spent the last day and a half doing social extroverted things, including walking around all day on Saturday at a festival, and I am mentally and physically tired, and I'm just ready to kind of curl up in bed and read. But I wanted to film this. If I'm really not super outgoing in this video, you know why. I read 4 things this past week, and a lot of them are really good, and I'm not gonna do them justice in this video. The first thing that I read this week was Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. I read North and South by her a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago I think, and I really love that book, so I hurried up and read Cranford, which is also on my 2015 reading list, and I thought Cranford was okay. It's about a little town in England called Cranford, where most of the inhabitants are older women, spinsters, widows, just a bunch of unmarried older women. And this town is very old-fashioned feeling. These women live in a state of genteel poverty. They're ladies, but they don't have a lot of money, and you just don't talk about that. The book is really a series of adventures and stories in the town following a couple of the same women, told from the perspective of a visitor, a Miss Mary Smith, who is friends with a couple of the ladies in town. And she shows up, they recount a story to her, something happens, like the time that all the women work themselves up into this tizzy about robberies in the neighborhood. They're going over and spending the night with each other carrying their plate because, oh my god, somebody's gonna rob my house, and then it turns out they imagined the entire thing. They just invented it out of rumors and gossip. It was quite funny, really. So it's a town where nothing happens, so the slightest change, the slightest bit of adventure or excitement gets completely blown out of proportion sometimes. It was nice. It was also really interesting to read a story that's completely dominated by women, most of whom are not married and have no interest in getting married. Romance is a very, very small part of this book. It's mainly about these women being friends and their families and the people they've lost over time. Next thing that I read was The Language of Content Strategy, edited by Abel and Rahel and Bailie. This is a reference work in the field of content strategy. It defines a lot of the important terms and concepts in the field that content strategists need to know about. I like content strategy. I really, really enjoy reading about it. It is kind of related to technical communication, which is what I do. I don't do content strategy at work. It's not part of my profession at the moment, but I just really love reading about it, and I've read most of the major works in the field so far. I think it's a fascinating area to read about, especially if you work with content or marketing or writing in an organization. It gives you a lot of food for thought. And this is not the best starting point, I'll be honest. It's really just a list of definitions. Every page is a definition from a different contributor and explains why it's important, but I thought it was very uneven in its execution, and it's a handbook is what it is. It's a reference work where you look up a definition, so it's like a mini dictionary. And I think that if you want an introduction to the field, you're much better off picking up the elements of content strategy, which gives you an overview of how all the pieces work together. So it was okay. I'm glad I picked it up because there were a couple of things in it that I didn't know about, and it refreshed my memory on some other things. Now we're getting to the really good stuff. The next thing that I finished was my reread of The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. I buddy read this with Joe from Final Blow Joe, and I had a really good time. We had a lot to talk about, and it just, as usual, it's so great being able to talk to somebody about a challenging work that you're reading. It just helps you to work out how you're feeling about it and to analyze it a bit better. So the story with this book is that I read it for the first time when I was 12, about the same time that I read a bunch of other things by Ursula Le Guin, and this has gone down as the only book by her that I didn't really like when I read it. And at the time that I read it, I knew that I didn't understand it. I knew that it has some more adult content in it, It's really about politics and government, and I did not understand it as a kid, and because I didn't understand it, I just didn't enjoy it very much. So, I love this book. I don't have a very strong emotional connection with it, to be honest. Not like I did with The Left Hand of Darkness, which just left me feeling like gut punched with how much it spoke to me. This is not something that I connect to on a personal level, really emotionally, but I feel like it has some really important things to say, and it's executed so well. This is why Le Guin is such an amazing writer. She can pack so much into a 320-page book, and you feel like you've read a massive work, like it should be longer. She just goes straight to the heart of things. The story of this is really about the differences in politics and society and culture and ideology and government between two sets of people on a planet and its moon, and a revolutionary who tries to bridge the gap between them. On the planet of Oros, hundreds of years prior, an anarchist revolutionary named Odo had split off a bunch of people who, well, they're anarchists, and they eventually bargained to set up their own settlement, their own world, colonized world on the planet's moon called Anaris? I don't know how to pronounce this, I'm sorry. This is set hundreds of years after this, when a physicist named Shevek on the moon goes to Oros. He's the first Odonian, or anarchist from the moon, to go back to Oros, and he goes back because he's attempting to come up with like a theory of everything in physics, kind of. Well, it's the theory that Einstein was trying to work towards. Shevek's society, the Odonian anarchist society, is not receptive of his ideas because of their own ideology, because of their society. He is trying to do something that they find unnecessary, I guess. They don't appreciate him, and they're kind of trying to stifle him somewhat because he's rocking the boat in their society. So he manages to communicate with Oros and the proprietarians on Oros, who agree to have him come to their planet, and they want his theory. They are very greedy for his theory, and it's the story of how Shevek grows up and learns more about how his own society works and how the politics of that work, and then how he goes to the planet where they're all from and rediscovers what their society is like. And there's so much talk about the social organism and how ideologies can be used in revolutions, but also to stifle people. And there are good things and bad things in both of these societies. They're almost opposites to each other. You almost want to see them merged to balance the weaknesses and fix the flaws of the other one. But I enjoyed everything in this book so much as an adult, and I would really recommend this for people who want to read Le Guin. The last thing that I finished this week was Caliban's War by James S.A. Corey. This is the second book in the Expanse series, which is going to be premiering as a TV show in December, I think, and I'm really looking forward to that now, because if there's one thing I can say about the series is that it is perfect. It's like reading a TV series, and if they manage to adapt it well, they have like a good enough budget, it's gonna be really awesome. I read the first book in the series sometime last year, and I was really hesitant about continuing because of the horror elements in it. Vomit zombies. If you've read it, you know what I mean. Vomit zombies. I didn't want to read any more about that, but some people who've read the entire series and really love it, like Catherine from the Android's Conundrum, told me that I should give another shot because the other books were not that gross, I guess. and Catherine was right. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed it much more than the first book. One of my criticisms of Leviathan Wakes was that I thought a lot of the main characters, like Holden and Miller, felt very cardboardy, like they were stock characters I'd read before. So I didn't enjoy that very much, but I loved the setting of it. The setting of the series is just epic space opera on the solar system level. Caliban's War, well, I don't want to spoil the first book, but Ganymede is like the breadbasket of the solar system of humanity. It's where all the food is grown, where people go to have their babies. And something happens on Ganymede that sets off a shooting war, and Ganymede completely collapses. And of course, the ripple effects of this and what actually caused this to happen it's going to be like the biggest event in human history. It could be absolutely disastrous. It is absolutely disastrous, and a bunch of people are trying to keep it from being even worse. A scientist on Ganymede named Prax Meng loses his daughter. She is abducted along with a bunch of other children on Ganymede by their doctor. They all have an autoimmune disorder. They don't have immune systems, and they are taken away by their doctor only hours before the calamity on Ganymede. And Prax, his only desire is to find his daughter, or at least to find out what happened to her if she has died. So most of the plot is a bunch of people in the solar system trying to find a little lost girl against a backdrop of utter chaos, as it seems that a true war between Earth and Mars is going to completely erupt and, destroy everything. I thought the characters were so much better in this book. Holden was a lot better for me, but I don't really like his character type. I don't like his personality. I agree so much with Avasarala, who at one point says he's like full of righteous indignation, but I really like Naomi. I really like Alex and Amos. I love Bobby. And while I don't really like Avasarala's personality, she's a great character. She's a 70-year-old grandmother running around handing people their asses. You have to really appreciate that, because older women just don't show up in really great roles in fiction sometimes, especially like in science fiction. So that was just fantastic. And Bobby, a huge Amazonian goddess of a Martian marine. We can all appreciate that. I'm definitely excited to read more of the books. I'm not sure how many I'll get read before the TV series premieres, but I might try to read Abaddon's Gate, which I think is the third book, before December. That's everything that I read this past week. I'm currently listening to the audiobook of Young Men and Spats by P.G. Wodehouse because I need some humor while I'm doing housework. And I'm reading Endymion by Dan Simmons. I'm buddy reading this with Tara from Terabyte, and I really like this book. I really like the Hyperion Canto series. Endymion is not as strong, not nearly as strong, I think, as Hyperion and the Fall of Hyperion. It's got a bit of a meandering mystical quest plotline, but the universe is great and I'm enjoying it. I'm not going to have any videos out this coming week unless I just happen to get some time to film on weekdays. I haven't prepared anything else to film. I'm getting behind on things. I need some time to catch up on booktube and non-booktube related stuff, so I'm just gonna take a little bit of a break. I feel really bad about this. Like, I need to make videos for you guys. I've felt kind of inconsistent with my schedule here recently, but such is life, unfortunately. I'll be back, hopefully in the groove, next Sunday, and until then, bye.